Back in 2014, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor was released. A simple game in all fairness, but a very fun one. To cut to the chase, the game mostly consists of brutally annihilating waves of Uruks, basically orcs but worse if that's even fucking possible, whether that's done the stealthy way with the smooth stealth system or loud and proud with the satisfying Arkham-styled combat, with an interesting nemesis system on top. The nemesis system would see you run into the same orcs over and over again, with their own names, personalities, strengths, and weaknesses. When you defeat them and they come back, they'll bear the scars of your last encounter. But if they defeat you or you otherwise die, they will be promoted, making them harder to defeat in your next encounter. This nemesis system really made the game for me. It's the reason why I really enjoyed Shadow of Mordor, a game of simple touch with a nemesis system so in depth that you felt like you were a part of the world regardless. The nemesis system made this game personal. Now, I really liked Shadow of Mordor, as did many people. The game saw success in the form of good reviews. The game's formula had worked. Now let's skip ahead 3 years to late 2017. The anticipated sequel, Shadow of War, is released. The game still sported the same quirks of the first game: satisfying combat, smooth stealth, comfortable all-round gameplay, and of course, the beloved Nemesis system, except this time the Nemesis system was even more in-depth, having even your enemies from Shadow of Mordor returning on occasion, to, you know, remind you of the good old days of seemingly killing them over and over again, as just like cockroaches, they keep coming back. Obviously, these Uruks are inherently stupid, as anybody with half a brain would realise that common sense would decree that getting in Talion's way was a terrible idea. I digress. Regardless of whether or not the game improved on Shadow of Mordor's features, there was something about the game that held me back from liking it as much as the first one. Shadow of War simply felt too familiar. In fairness, the formula that crafted Shadow of Mordor really did work, but what kept me back from liking Shadow of War as much as I liked Shadow of Mordor was the fact that I felt as if I was playing the exact same game, at least for the most part. To me, it seemed as if Shadow of War failed to innovate, or rejuvenate the sequel to make it stand out. The gameplay just felt too samey. Obviously, we had a new area, updated graphics, and an improved nemesis system, as well as new customization options, but the game played the exact same way. Nothing had really changed. Overall, I felt like I was playing Shadow of Mordor. As a result, I found myself judging Shadow of War based on the fresh experience it didn't deliver, which is why, despite the quality being more or less the same between the two games, I still value Shadow of Mordor much higher. In fairness, not only did Shadow of War copy-paste all the good features from Shadow of Mordor, but it also took some of the bad. For example, and probably one of the most annoying bad things about Shadow of Mordor, were parts of the game that required a grind. Shadow of War had very grindy segments too, though these were worse than those seen in the first game. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that this was to push the loot boxes and all that microtransaction jazz, which was going on in the background as a ploy to milk as much money out of the players as possible by holding the players' time to ransom. You want to complete this game? Either grind for 24 hours doing mundane shit over and over again, or buy our loot boxes and be ever so slightly more out of pocket. The loot box sub point really doesn't affect my main point so much, so I'm just going to get back to that. Shadow of Mordor's grindy part wasn't the most fun part of the game, if I'm honest. Shadow of War's grind wasn't only as bad, but actually worse, so much so that I've given up trying to finish the game. In order to make the best game sequel possible, you need to do several things. Retain and improve on the previous game's good stuff, remove or improve the bad stuff, introduce new stuff that refreshes the experience and defines the game as a sequel. And although Shadow of War definitely hasn't ignored these things, they could have done a lot more to make the game stand out. That's not to say that Shadow of War's customization features, the improved nemesis system, superior aesthetic finish, and a whole new game's worth of story content doesn't exist, because there are improvements, new features, and so on and so forth. I'm just saying that there isn't enough to define Shadow of War from Shadow of Mordor, which is why I think that the game doesn't hit the mark for me. I guess the moral of this story is that no matter how successful your game may be, when it comes to the sequel, innovation and creativity are crucial when in development. If a game does well, that's great, but you can't copy and paste a successful game's features, maybe do some slapdash side work without changing up the base formula in any fashion, all the while expecting it to succeed to the same level. Innovation is key. This problem isn't exclusive to any one franchise, plenty hit the same issues. A game is successful, and in the wake of that success the developers are too frightened to change up some fundamentals to refresh the experience when it comes to making a sequel. I literally just realised I could apply this very argument to every Ubisoft game ever. That was an exaggeration. Anywho, Failing to refresh a sequel is just as bad as a sequel losing the franchise's identity, which is why it's important for developers to not fall into the dilemma and simply take a leap of faith. And that's the biggest problem with Shadow of War. The essence of fatigue, since they didn't really change it up enough. But regardless of this, Shadow of War is still a good game. It is still to the quality of Shadow of Mordor. But had this sequel felt like a rejuvenation, the game would have been so much better. And to me, this is Shadow of War's greatest downfall. But of course, you're going to have to let me know what you think about all this down in the comment section, because that is what it's there for. But anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter if you want, and I'll see you all very soon with another video at some point.